Hi guys, I'm here with Santo Bartez. He is a researcher and amazing at the ancient history stuff. And today we are going to talk about nubs, 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 no, 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 nubs. Like the thing about nubs is that a lot of people have been talking about them a lot, but we're going to go deep in the woods and really get people keep on saying what are nubs, and I have like a bunch of videos about it, but this is something that we've worked on a little bit. Santo has put together like a pretty good presentation. We're going to show you some images and go through just sort of like a one-on-one. If you don't know what a nub is, we're going to go through it with you right now.
Yeah,
So
kind of
yep,
like a primer. Yeah.
like a primer. Welcome, Santo. And a lot of you might know about nubs, but you got to get a refresher. It's good.
Yeah, like I was saying, I think this conversation is going to go one of two ways. We're going to make people happy. We're going to make people mad. I don't think there's really a medium uh, area that's going to please everyone. So I'm just going to present what my opinions are and what my observations are, and we're going to go from there.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so let's define nubs to start with. Um, my definition is like it's a protrusion from the stone itself that's connected to the stone, and they are on bedrocks, they're on blocks, they're on these ancient stones, or even on a couple of modern examples that we're going to give you. So they're these, like, I don't know, help me out. How would you redefine that better?
No, that was a good primer. I mean, some people call them knobs. You'll see that phrase used. There's not really a standard word other than nubs, which the community created to point to and say, yes, this particular feature that we're talking about, we call them nubs. So I've seen them referred to as lifting bosses. I've seen them referred to, like I said, knobs. Their purpose is the question because, like we've said, they're everywhere. Some people think they're a mechanical assist for lifting. Some people think they're a mechanical assist for moving. Some people think they're a mason's mark.
The
Um,
lifting for lifting thing is actually technically, if the mainstream ever does give an explanation, when they very rarely do acknowledge them, they will say they're for lifting. But we'll show you why that's kind of bogus because of some of their placements and things, but go on. And then there are also Mason's marks, some people say, which that one is used a lot, but to me, that one doesn't really make a ton of sense.
no, and particularly in some of these examples, you'll see if they are a mason's mark, they were a mason's mark for a region. And that's where I kind of gave a hint before we had this conversation on Twitter that we'd be talking about this. And I used the phrase idea. And I would rather use that phrase to describe the transmission of nubs because they were an idea that someone showed to someone else, and that other person had was either so impressed by them or whatever that they took that idea of a nub and they molded it into their culture. And then that person transmitted it. And that transmission is very obvious in some areas. Some areas it's not that obvious, but the idea seemed to have been universal that we're going to somehow mark our stonework with these protrusions so that others, as the esoterics people say, who have the eyes to see, will know what these marks represent. And unfortunately, we don't know what those marks are anymore.
I
We have
mean,
that amnesia.
and there's also, okay, they are found on bedrock. They're all different shapes and sizes. Okay, so you have little bitty nubs. You have huge, like Youngshin quarry, like bigger than my torso nubs. You have them round, square, rectangular, D-shaped, triangular, rectangular. Like you have that some that are super stick protruding super far, some that are barely raised. You have some that do look like they're broken off, and you even have the anti-nub, which almost looks like the inverse of nubs that kind of go in somewhere. Particularly, I find that a lot in Peru. I don't know what it's really called. I just called it was kept calling it the anti-nub, but I don't know what it's really called. But like so the thing is there are also people talk about like how it could be a language or could this. They're at the bottom of pillars. They're at the bottom of buildings. They're at the top of columns. They're inside stadiums. They're underneath seats. They're on bedrocks. They're on the middle of the wall, the top of the wall, the middle of the block, the bottom of the block, the side of the block. I mean, there's no consistency about where their placement is amongst the only thing that you can say about nubs that's like I would say definitive is that they are all over the world. That's the thing.
They're
Now,
global.
they're global. Like we have them in Peru, we have them in Egypt, we have them in, I mean, Turkey, we have them in, I mean, where do we not have them? We have them in China, we have them, uh, I don't know. So that's the thing that is the most mysterious thing, and that you always want to come back to is like if you start getting into this, well, you could do whatever you want, it's your life. But if you start getting into to this thing where you're like, oh, I think they're for this, or I figured out their function or whatever. Okay, great. But they are everywhere. They're in India. So that's the thing is like and depending on the region, it looks like they almost had different functions. So that's something crazy to talk about.
When
But yeah.
exactly when the idea was transmitted, the receiver of that idea took it and made it their own. That's your point of there's not consistency to them is valid when you look at the global scale, but when you look at a micro scale like the nubs that are in Anatolia, there seems to be some consistency, at least when you're talking like the theater nubs, the triangles and the squares, and on the interior of tunnels. You'll see a somewhat of a repeated pattern, but that pattern doesn't necessarily apply to India. India, you'll find nubs on walls and sometimes on ground floor, but that pattern doesn't apply necessarily to like Sri Lanka, where you'll find them everywhere. They're just be dotted on columns. They'll be dotted on anything. The one thing I've kind of noticed is there's always seems to be a context of water around them. If you find nubs, there'll be water somewhere around there. That kind of holds true. I mean, for humans, food, fire, shelter, that won't give you life. You still need water. You can die without water and still have food, fire, and shelter. So was the water there and then the nub, or is the nub there to, as a worship or pointer for water? That's another question that I kind of you'll see repeated things sometimes when you start looking at a really broad area of, oh, this nub is near water, this nub is also near water. So it's
Now I
another one of the mysteries.
it is now one of the things I think is that I like if they were um for a function like lifting or something, they would just take them off when they were done. Like you don't build like this giant megalithic structure that's beautiful and then leave some like, dent marks on it. Like if they're sophisticated enough to build these things, then you would be sophisticated enough to polish them even and smooth, like for an aesthetic reason. So for me, that one's like also very, besides the fact that they would fall off if the weight of the stone would be lifted directly from those. But besides that, they are like, yeah, I just don't think that if that were the real reason, then they would keep them there, you know. Um,
Yeah, I've seen that often as when they are acknowledged is that, well, they were lifting devices. Well, then why weren't they removed? That
yeah.
so you're saying that the lifting part was part of the final design, and if that was the final design, then why don't we see that on more places in other so uh, like in the Greek world, other Hellenistic temples or palaces, fortresses? Why don't we see the nubs on everything when we only see them on some things? That is just uh, it's almost a red herring. It's like it's an easy answer, but it's not. It's not an easy answer. It actually has more questions. So yeah,
well, and I think like my brain has gone many times to like there's like three theories that I like the most about nubs. Like one that I thought about a lot was that like I used to have those braces with the what was it called, Invisalign, where it had those little like they put these little dots, they put little nubs on your teeth,
Mhm.
and then you put plastic casing over it, and like they're like the nodules that hold the thing in place. So I almost felt like they were a base infrastructure to hold like another casing on top of. But that doesn't hold up because they're on like what you used to need one on this wall and 40 on this wall. Like it doesn't,
Yeah.
it's really inconsistent how that works. And then the other thing is like Eric Van Donigan and his, I can't remember the name of the book, but there was a one that he had about his Egyptian tour guide who'd passed away told him that when he was like 14 or 12 or something in his youth, he was on a in Egypt, and he was doing a his dad and his uncle and stuff were grave robbing, and he got into a tomb in Saqqara, and then it got collapsed on it, and so he was stuck in this room while they tried to go get him out. And he ended up basically figuring out that if he like jumped up and down or hit them, like they acted as almost light bulbs, like they would like glow the room. So like the actual uh, they were calling them knobs, but the little protrusions on the wall were acting as a form of a light source. And then the other really cool, interesting thing I heard was, or like another one of my friends, Andrew McKenzie, who is like this New Zealand guy who's also a researcher, he was like, since they're on like these columns and then they're on the stadiums at the bottom of the seats, I wonder if they had some sort of like acoustic properties, like amplifier sound, like almost like they were speakers or something. So, and I wonder if they were attachment points for something, that a technology that they had for something like that. I don't know, because it's not consistent with why you would have them in quarries on bedrocks, right?
Right.
There's not one explanation that is a panacea for all of them. It just isn't. But yeah, anyway, they're a really cool, crazy mystery. So
Yeah. I mean, again, that the differences that you'll see culturally goes back to my. mm, I'm going to keep hammering on this. The idea when it touched the new culture changed. So, very likely, there might not be an answer that solves all the nubs. I think that's going to be the most bitter pill to swallow, in my opinion, at least. The global reason for nubs is gone. We can say it was a progenitor culture that traveled the earth and spread its knowledge. That probably is some element to it, but I think the idea moved as people moved. And there's some overlap with the idea of like copper when the copper mining mystery of North America. Where did that material go? Well, was that a transmission of nub knowledge between cultures? And that's why we see nubs so differently on North America and South America compared to the nubs that you'll find in Europe and the Indus Valley. Um, Again, I don't. It will make your brain turn to mush trying to find the one unified theory. So I try not to make my brain more mush than what it already is, and I try to look at just the what were nubs doing in this area, what were nubs doing in this area. Try to break it into little chunks.
yeah,
So
I
that's
mean, for me, I also kind of feel like right now it you have we have an architectural language is what I would say, in terms of like we have nails and screws and 2x4s, and it doesn't matter if you're in like Japan or Texas or like whatever, like in Peru or the Middle East. Like you may have like different styles of buildings, you may like have different architectural looks, but we all use concrete and wood and like metal like fastenings. So I almost kind of feel like it could also be something like that, where it's some sort of function of the building process, maybe. Um, and but it's just expressed differently regionally.
that's possible. That's one of the theories that when you look again, kind of in a micro level, like in South America, you could very easily make the argument that the nubs there are a byproduct of the tooling, and the tooling as it moved changed. The and that it's almost circular. So when you look at like the nubs on at Ollantaytambo on like the wall of the 10 niches, those nubs have a very kind of distinct look. Those nubs don't look anything like the neuralgic wells in Italy that are supposed to be contemporary with each other. They just don't look the same. They don't have the same shape. They don't have the same size. They don't have the same placement. They're very different. So the tooling to me is different between the two.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
It's like the Corey Concha versus like Olive Tomblay, or I mean, or even Saxe Woman, or the like you have like these giant ones, and then in there you have some like fine, petite, refined ones that kind of do look like Braille or some kind of language thing. Well, depending on which part of the Corey Concha, because there's different parts. There's also, I noticed a lot in particularly Europe and stuff. There seems to be uh there are some that are not put in their original place. Like the wall is reconstructed, and
Reuse, yeah.
yeah, they're reused, and then they just put the like some of the nubs out. So you kind of really don't like, sometimes it's hard to know what was actually the true function of them when they're kind of reused in some different like reconstruction kind of ways. Um
There's an idea that the nubs are a language, kind of akin to like Quipu. Um, I think there is some merit to that. I think that follows, as I say, the idea of here is how we express this language through masonry and stonework, and these are the shapes that we use. And the receiving culture said, "Oh, that's an interesting idea. If we want to express that idea using, I want to call it Quipu in masonry, we're going to do it this way because we really like squares and squares are cool to us. So like you guys like the cylindrical, we're going to go with squares and triangles." And
what
so
is
when they,
Cluedo? What is Cluedo?
that's the knotted piece
Oh, on
that the
the road,
Incas
like
used.
yeah, how they use.
Exactly.
Okay, I know what you're talking about. It's like their calculation.
It was a calculator, it was a spreadsheet, it was a tally, and it was, and this is taking research just to get that much information out. I think the Quipu idea has a bit of merit. How it applies to nubs is is the hard part to prove, because you can look at examples like the Coricancha in Cusco where there's walls of consecutive nubs and you can see, yeah, there might be a pattern here. But if you try to apply that same logic to someplace else, like Sacsayhuaman, no, this looks like gobbledygook. It
Right.
doesn't, they could have maybe been a parallel idea, but I think there is something there. And um, maybe some enterprising kid in a few years will take a large language model AI and start applying some of these ideas and, you know, getting some thought that we haven't come across yet as far as, yeah, this idea has merit here. And these are the proofs in these photos, or this video kind of helps back that up.
Yeah, I mean, I look forward to that day because it would be really great to. I mean, for me, I just sort of feel if it were just the nubs, that is weird enough. And I mean, and it is also one of those things where I think the first time I mean, I I went to Peru and I was like, when you're at like Olive Tremblay or Saxon, you're like, what are these bumps, these weird bumps about? And I couldn't find, and I was just calling them the bumps because you couldn't really find anything else about them, right?
Mhm.
And and nobody knows, nobody has any idea what to tell you about that. Um, but then like when I was in India, like I was just so enamored by just the mass and like all the crazy pretty sculpture and everything. I didn't even notice the nubs, and because I wasn't aware of what a nub was when I was in India. I was there in 2018, and then like I had known that they were in Peru, but it didn't stick out to me at the same time, you know. And
Mhm.
then I looked back at photos and I was like, oh crap, there is some. I actually saw a couple of nubs in India, but it took pictures by them and had no idea what I was even looking at. And I think that's something that's interesting that people really they are kind of easy to miss in some kind of way.
Mhm. If you didn't know any better, it's just how the temple's supposed to look. Some of the Indian temples, particularly like in Hampi, at that temple complex, they're dotted everywhere, and so it's the forest and the trees. If you're not specifically looking for them, yeah, it looks like a design element. That's how it's supposed to look. Um, yeah, it's another one of those things. Like I said, if you have the eyes to see, you'll see them. If not, they're background noise.
Yeah, so for me, I they are they add to the like other hallmarks, right?
Right.
They add they're like the best hallmark I love the most. But I mean, there's also polygonal, beveled blocking, pinch holes, like the size of stuff. There's all kinds of these different things that are found in conjunction with them
Mm-hmm.
that then you start going like, oh wait, okay, we really might have been global before they're telling us we were global. Like there really might have been more to this. But if you just took it isolation wise by itself, it would be it's a little bit harder to define them. But when you start like looking at what other features are found at that same site that are kind of bizarre that are everywhere, then the story starts getting a little bit more, okay, there could be more to this.
That's a very good observation. I usually take a look at things like if there's one hallmark, there'll be other hallmarks. Very my last thread on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, was looking at a what's considered a Roman temple in Croatia, and I was tipped off to that by History Rev, who's on Twitter. He's a good follow. Look him up, people. He had noticed that there were nubs on what's called the Temple of Jupiter. Um, I got to looking around, and not only are there nubs there, there's pinch holes there. There's pinch holes in very near to those nubs. So yes, usually when you find one hallmark, the other hallmark is somewhere around there, which again is part of the mystery. Like, what are they saying? Are the nubs and the pinch holes contemporary to each other? Did one come after, like in recognition? Like, okay, there's nubs here. We'll put a pinch hole for others to know that we have come, or I don't know.
I don't either. I mean, and then there's the whole thing of like, there's like holes in general, like with there's these crazy like damage holes,
The
and
damage holes, yes.
you know, that's like a rabbit hole. That's like a whole video in and of itself. But you know, those are those are if you're gonna have a nub at your site, you're gonna have pinch holes out of your site, or sorry, you're gonna have damage holes somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. And pinch holes and yeah, or bevel blocks, polygonal blocks, like you said. I mean,
Yeah.
it's part of the. You could start just dominoes falling as far as the questions that one leads to another, to another, to another, and to me the fascinating part are the questions and the series of thoughts. But sometimes that's the frustrating part is if you're looking for an answer, you might not find one. You might find another series of questions.
Now,
Or, yeah, go ahead.
we have friends who've gone down the road of this just means all history's fake, or this means that everything's geopolymer, or I mean, they come up with these like panacea, like, this means this thing, and there's no more questions to ask then, because every history's all the same then, and it's only 300 years old, and everything's fake and everything's stupid, and next, time to move on to something else. I mean, I've seen that done time and time again when people get down the nub rabbit hole. It's interesting.
It can make you lose sleep depending on how fixated you become on it, because my favorite phrase is complex questions bring uncomfortable answers. And there are some pretty esoteric ideas that can come from the discussion of nubs. You can look at some sites, you can read the theories that, yeah, these are non-human intelligence that are manipulating these sites with tooling that we just do not have. And you can look at that evidence and say, yeah, I mean, that is no, let's say, human mind would think of some of the stone manipulation that we see in places, but in Peru, it's the playground of the gods in that respect, as far as the absolute lunacy that you'll see in places like Cuenco and some other places where the stone manipulation just does not have an explanation. So
Well, and
trying to rationalize it, just don't
and
rationalize it.
this is where I've said, like, this is where I get crazy, is like I think I don't know, especially for me, it's polygonal. Makes me believe that with this may not have been human in terms of how about this? Whoever built these things doesn't think the way we think. And nubs is included in that. We don't think in
Mm-hmm.
nub terms. So they don't think the way we think. And like there's like a spatial difference. Like they pre-plan out the block laying of an entire wall structure before it's put down. Like you don't like no two stones are the same in a polygonal wall. And that makes you kind of go like, what? That's like it's almost it's like a different kind of way of thinking. And I don't know, you can be conservative about that and be like, okay, well maybe that was, like a cousin to the humans, like a or not Neanderthal building or like whatever. Or you could say, nope, that's like a dragons built it or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You could say aliens built it. You could say whatever you want to say. But I do sort of agree that whoever built these things doesn't think the way we think now.
No, absolutely not. And your point, like the polygonal stuff, I I'd make a lot of terrain for like models and dioramas. And one of the things I like to use is a big chunk of foam and a hot wire to cut through it to make the shapes. A lot of those massive polygonal walls, like a Saxo woman, they look exactly like that. They look like there was a giant block and someone came with a hot wire and then cut the shapes out. The shapes have purpose and design, just like a nub. That almost makes more sense than, yeah, they went to the quarry, they cut and measured a 30-degree arc, a 22-degree arc, a 16-degree arc, a 32-degree arc, a 16-degree arc,
Right.
perfectly matched that together, drug that rock, lifted it, put it in place, and then 30-degree arc, 16-degree arc to match the stone to it. And then they kept repeating that process. They did awesome. It was easy for them. And I think that's the lynch for all of these things. It was easy for them. Their
Yeah.
tooling made it easy for them
The prevalence
because,
means that it was easy because this
right,
isn't just like one major site. This is on a lot of sites.
right. I think over time, it did not become as easy because you do see some sites where the polygonal work is just not as good. And either that's inheritors who've gotten,
Yeah.
right, they're not working at the same massive scale, they're working at a smaller scale. The tolerances are not as good, the designs aren't as, let's say, grandiose. It's like the inheritors of the tool set and the idea just didn't get the full training.
Yeah.
They weren't there that day that the HR handed out the paperwork for the employee handbook that says, here's how you use the tool, this is what you do. Or again, if you go with the non-human intelligences, they left the tooling and then others came up with no clue, however, to use the tooling, and they did their best because the gods came, they carved these walls, they wanted us to honor them, so we're going to carve them, and it's just not as good. Well, let's keep trying, guys.
Yeah.
The sun god wants us to try.
And and I just had this guy on called Patrick Riley, and I love this theory. I don't know how true it is, but I love it. He was saying that he believes that Atlantis is from the future, and that basically, if time travel is real, then why wouldn't they just go live in a like if all time is one and it's like a giant stick of butter and like they're born into civilization like over here where resources are really taken up, then he's like they could just use time travel to go back into a swatch where they knew the climate was optimal and live out a certain time, but then like go take their time traveling and their advanced knowledge, build during that time and live in that, and then we would be none the wiser. So like the linearity of what we think of time might be even different. And I'm actually that's something that I'm open to.
Hmm.
I don't know that it's true. It's a good theory. I don't know it's true, but that's that there's that consideration. And I also have considered that the physics of the planet weren't the same when these things were built because of like you and I talked about that on our last talk where we talked
Right.
we did a big a deep dive into the size of stones, and are the size of these blocks and things like that. And one of the things I think we mentioned was like, hey man, like that some of these stones we couldn't move today. We don't even if we could lift them with the amount of cranes and this like a Youngshin quarry or the ballback stone, even if you could lift them, you couldn't. We don't have a vehicle that could transport them like
Right.
without it breaking. We can't physically easily move these things. So it's almost like the physics of the planet had to be more conducive for like gravity was less or like something was different to where this wasn't hard to do.
Exactly. That gets into a lot of the really, I'm gonna say esoteric, the more esoteric ideas, like with Saturn used to be closer. How
Mhm.
does that affect physics as far as the gravity on Earth is concerned if you consider Saturn was closer? I've only started recently kind of getting into the work from the like the Thunderbolts group.
Oh yeah, that they
There's overlap with that in the electric universe, and there's stuff there. I don't close my head to ideas like that, because at the end of the day,
yeah, this stuff isn't explained by mainstream.
yeah,
And like it's hard and it's hard for me even being in it or it's now I'm looking at like 8 to 10 years into this thing and I still don't have any more answers than when I started. I mean, I think I just have more examples.
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, to that point, when I first really got into this with the pandemic in 2020, um, I was just like, wow, why isn't anyone else talking about this? Why isn't this, more discussed? And then you start going down that rabbit hole. You start following the breadcrumbs. You start seeing the evidence. You start noticing. You see the repeated patterns, the repeated shapes. You start asking questions. Your questions don't get satisfactory answers because you've got eyes. You've lifted boxes. You've
Yeah,
used the
just like
lever.
yeah, we played with Legos. I mean, like
Yeah, I mean it starts feeding on itself as far as the answers that you're given aren't answers. They lead to more questions, like we started at the beginning of the discussion. These questions lead to questions, they don't lead to answers. If they do lead to an answer, the answer maybe only applies to a very small section. It doesn't apply to everything, which leads to more questions and leads to more discussion.
yeah.
And it's it's kept me entertained, as far as that's
That's
concerned.
fair. It does. It's entertaining as hell. So let's get into some images and
Okay.
go through this with us because we're going to show you guys some examples of nubs.
So this is a lot of the weirdness that is in and around Cusco. We're going to start around Cusco, kind of work our way to Sacsayhuaman and Cuenco. And then right off the bat, you've got this knob just in the middle of a field of stone. I mean, okay, it meant something to somebody. This is arguably one of the examples of it being like a Quipu type of language. You've got these repeated shapes and then repeated pattern of these shapes. They're circle, small circle, large circle,
Mhm.
arguably a square, and then a small circle. This small circle is blowed out. There's examples of these
There's
blowed
a
out
lot of that.
nubs
Yeah, the
in
ball.
Corincancha. Exactly. In context with worked stone, and then in context with this tunnel over here on the side.
By the way, I would say that's attached to bedrock, which
Yeah.
The
this
geopolitics people are going to be mad at us about that, but they can just, do that.
exactly same photo, different angle. This is bedrock. This is not a stone small temple. This is a bedrock shape that was intentionally worked down to have these nubs on here. And these nubs, when you look at it straight on, it's hard to see that the depth of them are different. You've got one that's a little higher, one that's smaller and intentionally flattened, one that was about the same height, but it's been shaped a little more, and the other one again has been blowed out. It's this is the details that make your brain just go in circles.
Yeah,
You
it's
have these,
hard to find two identical nubs sometimes, actually.
yeah. This I think is some kind of crazy plug that was left over from whatever tooling, like perhaps a mount point for a 5-axis CNC machine or something.
Well, and honestly, they do look like plugs whenever they're on the sarcophagus lids at the back of, so it's similar to that.
Yeah. And in context, again, this is a giant worked field. This was quarried to me. You can see repeated shapes of blocks being cut, but then you have this
Yeah.
artifact left. It's just mind blowing. Um, again, these nubs that are in the Cusco itself, they have a very different appearance from the ones we were just talking about, like these. So, are they contemporary? Is it the idea that has changed locally as the idea passed from generation to generation? The tooling changed,
Right. The function seems different.
right? And again, as we were talking about some of the polygonal work, yeah, they're not working as big. The work is kind of. I know these walls have been rebuilt over the generations, but still, it's it's it is precise, but the level of precision is just as not as much as in some of the other areas.
Hmm.
Kind of a close up of some of them where this is intentionally left, and then again you see some of the
Misshapen
these
ones, and you wonder what their original shape would have been, but
right. How large were they? What was the size of those? And then some of the surfacing, the stonework in there, kind
oh,
of showing the precision. Um, I want to switch images to the one of my more favorite sites, Nusta Hispania. This is a archaeological site that doesn't get a lot of attention, but again, you've got this boulder here, and it's got a very clear kind of rectangular nub that was carved into it. The centerpiece of Nuestra Hispania, which I don't think I'm pronouncing correctly, is a rock called Uruk Rumi, which means like the white stone. And it's a massive boulder, and it has been cut and shaped and worked, and it has nubs on it. It has these stone nubs intentionally cut into it.
rectangle.
This is another shot of the first one here from a different angle. This particular boulder was cut, and then you have a round nub that was left in place. This is another example of the Uruk Rumi stone with this nub, another of that circular nub on that boulder. This is the Uruk Rumi. So this stone is massive, and you can see there are these intentional nubs that have been left. But you can also kind of tell this thing was being quarried. So are the nubs part of the quarrying, or was the quarrying secondary afterwards? It's just not very clear. But somebody came along and was peeling off big sheets of this stone, but for some reason they decided to leave certain markers.
I mean, they call those wakas, and it's like and it's very they're all over Cusco. It's crazy when you go walking around. And like you'll walk around so many that I've never seen anywhere before. They're just crazy, and I don't know what they were for. This is I can't this these I used to call them the what the fuck boulders. I have no idea. Like, I mean, they do look very quarry like, but their prevalence is very weird. So I don't know.
This stone is just, it's another one of these where I was talking about, you look at it and you say, what were they thinking? And then you quickly decide, I cannot think what they were thinking.
But this is where I kind of go like, well, then maybe a dragon built this, or like some guy like I get into like, okay, I'll entertain a crazy idea because this is not like a very human like function, presumably, and also like way of building or thinking. It's weird, really weird.
There's a feature that I've been tracking on some of my threads that my followers might remember. I talk about the gouge, and this guy has the gouge. The gouge is not quite global, but it's global. There's examples of it from
I
Iran to
gouge
Peru.
that like little lip.
This little indent here, yeah. There's these two little, and they're not little. This thing is like 20-25 feet tall. This is a massive
Right.
boulder, but this little feature here, this cut is very specific, and you'll find it in a lot of places in Peru, and you'll find it even as far as places like Persia and Iran. Um, that always looks secondary. It never looks like it was part of the original design because it's usually very crude. But it's another head scratcher. It's another little thing that we'll probably need to talk about when I get
Okay.
more info on it.
I can
So
do
I guess that's a teaser.
love it.
Um, let's let's jump across the earth. We're going to go to Armenia because I think this site is a site it's very hard to pronounce for me at least.
Yeah,
The
I could do it.
the name of the site is
Or something.
Teshabaini. Teshabaini. Um, it's supposed to be, again, I don't get too hung up on dating, but I try to use dating to give at least some context when you're thinking about, well, is something Neolithic, is something, Copper Age, Iron Age.
Right.
So it's supposed to have been dated to about 650 BC, sacked sometime around 580 BC. It's tied to a culture in Armenia that was called the Urartu Empire. And they were kind of in between the Sumerians and the Scythians. They kind of got stuck between a rock and a hard place because they were besieged on both sides. But they're a very interesting culture, and I think what is left in the ruins here are an example of reuse because there are these
Yeah.
extremely crude polygonal walls that have nubs in them. And these nubs are very intentional, but how these walls are shaped was simply by somebody told to make a wall. And
Right.
this is the effort they gave. But they did not remove these nubs. Somebody at least said, build this wall, give it your best effort, don't touch the nubs because they are in several places. This is an example of that wall being continued just not well, but then you'll have these nubs. Sometimes the nub has been damaged. Was the damage part when it was assembled, or did it come later with sacking or other things? See, again, this is in a very intentional left shape. You can see the chisel marks of the stone around it as they surfaced it, and this was left.
Mhm.
Again, more of the polygonal wall. This is kind of gives context to this. This site was a hilltop town fortress that had a large wall on the outside of it with a kind of a small city complex. Again, we have that nub in context with the wall. Kind of see where I believe these blocks were part of a larger structure
Yeah.
that was broken up and reused. Because you can find an example of some of the stones here that have a very high degree precision cut. If you've got guys that can make this kind of cut and surface this,
They can do
they're
better
not the
than that in the stacking of the wall. Yeah.
right. They're going to build a better wall than what we're just looking at. And again, you've got some nice right angle cuts out here that are just haven't been exposed. The site, as is typical with a lot of these sites that we look at, has only had very superficial excavation done to it. And then, once they have an answer that kind of satisfies whatever question they had in their head, they stop looking. So you get a lot of this where there's still blocks in situ. What's under this block? What's going on under here?
Right. How big is that block and how perfect is it?
Exactly. Again, this is that same block with the right angle cut. You could tell this block was very well shaped and worked. Somebody put care into cutting this surface, and those aren't the same people that built these polygonal walls. They're just not, in my opinion. If they were,
I
then
agree, actually.
you've got a problem with your work gang.
And like that doesn't even mean like that could or couldn't be a modern reconstruction. That could be, hundreds of years ago they reconstructed it like that. But yeah, at some point in time, if they went to the trouble to have those straight of edges and those kind of curves and things like that, it would have been more precise than this.
Exactly. Exactly. That's why I think this site is dated to 650 or 680 BC, but I think it was built on top of another site that was already here. It was a Nubs site with precision masonry, and it was either devastated or it was intentionally devastated and remade with this. So again, we see the idea of Nubs on the other side of the world from Peru. It's another one of these mysteries. It's crazy. Sorry, I had to get a drink. um, let's we can. I want to look at Iran. I love this site. It is
Yeah, I heard about this site from you a couple years ago.
the site.
Crazy on this. I love them.
The site in particular is Pasargadae. Um, it's more known for being the resting place of Cyrus the Great. Um, it's it is a fascinating site. There's a lot of monumental architecture there. This particular feature is called the Tali Khat. Um, that they call it an unfinished foundation, or it was going to be a platform for perhaps a fortress or a citadel. Um, Tali Khat, I think it means a like throne hill or something like that. It is very far away. Like this camera picture here, this valley below is where Sargadae is. So this dude was really up high, and we have those damage holes we're talking about. This particular feature is covered in the damage holes, but it's also covered in nubs, and some of them are kind of cheeky and hidden down here. Like this right here. There's a nub here on this surface. You can see where the block is.
Hell on this one.
Yeah, you can see where they were surfacing.
Yeah,
And
I
there's
got block surfacing there, but
it's like they were surfacing from the bottom to the top, which is kind of strange.
there I can see a nubs.
Yeah, the front facing the valley has the majority of the nubs on them, and the stonework itself is very Hellenistic, sort of. It's a beveled block stop of masonry, but there's our square nubs, and the square nub is a nub that you will find in a lot of Greek or Hellenistic masonry from all over Anatolia, Persia, Turkish sites. You'll find this type of square nub. But you'll notice the squares aren't necessarily uniform. They're not in the same place on the block. They're not the same size, but they do have a rough similar shape. Here's a better example. You see, this particular nub is not on a beveled block. This particular one is on a beveled block. So there's intention to that. That block that's not beveled is sitting
Oh yeah.
right around others that are beveled. It's been intentionally smooth surfaced, but with the nub in place. If you're telling me this nub was for lifting, why is it way over here on the left instead of, maybe more dead center like
Okay,
that one?
just I thought that beveled was the indention in, and then like rustification and or like textured is the name if it was roughed.
I call these guys bevel blocks. I really don't get too much more in depth as far as the naming of them because
'Cause
my brain doesn't work
I
that way.
basically would think both are beveled, but one is textured and one's not.
Yeah, I can see your point because this bevel still has
Like, or it still's
this
indented on the edges.
right. Um,
Just I'm kind of trying to like make sure I define it right for myself.
right. I don't get too hung up as far as
Okay.
whether they're. I just want to know if it's beveled or not. The type of beveling, that's a whole other discussion because there are like this example shows there are differences in the type of beveling. Um,
There are.
it's just one I've not really dug too much into.
Okay.
Again, limited brain capacity. If I have to learn something new, I have to forget something. You can this particular part of the site's always kind of perplexed me because this site was abandoned sometime after Cyrus died. They took most of Sargadae down and went and created Persepolis nearby, and that became the new capital. Um, but somebody decided to come do some repair work, try to throw some grout in here, try to do some tiling. I don't think this is modern work, but they went through a lot of effort to do this, considering all that block that's on top of it. So that's a head scratcher unique to this particular monument, in my opinion. The damage. This is kind of gives an example of just how large this platform was. This dude was, or I should say, is. It's gigantic. It's 15 meters, and it's 20 layers, and it's 80 meters in length. So
Oh,
this was a lot of effort to build this, and then just to stop and say, yeah, we're going to do something else.
yeah. If they even did, yeah, that's crazy.
Um, let's let's shift gears. Let's go to another example. We've talked a lot about India. We've talked about brought up Hampi. Hampi is a very fascinating complex. It's one of the largest in India. It's just huge. There are, I think, over a dozen main temples there. It's one of the few places that have temples to all the forms of Shiva, Rama, and it's it's still visited and a major place today as far as tourism goes. And it is on a massive river. It's right next to a huge river. So we've bringing up that water context again. This particular part of Hampi called Hazara Rama was kind of it was dedicated to Lord Rama, one of the forms of, if I get this wrong, don't hold it against me. I'm only ancillary with my Hindu knowledge. It was one of the forms of Shiva. It was also, this temple was home to one of the royal families. And you see these nubs on the outer walls of it.
Yeah.
There is some kind of pattern here. You can see there's a nub and then a series of nubs. And then these nubs, and then one nubs below them are shifted over. And then again, on the third set of nubs, there's only one nub and it's shifted over again. So you start one, two, two, one.
Hmm.
That pattern doesn't extend across the entire wall, which is even more frustrating because you see right next to it, you've got no nubs in the top concourse. There's the two repeat. There's no repeating underneath it. There's no repeating underneath it. And then from the two, there's one that repeats. And then below it, there's actually one and then two and two. So you've got a gap, two, and then this either wasn't finished or has been damaged. And it's hard to see what's happening.
Hmm.
So this was an example that I could say, like, yeah, perhaps this is a type of encoded language here. There's intentionality
Yeah,
with where
with some
these
sort of it feels like a kind of non-repeating pattern that you might be able to figure out, but I don't know if you would, but I mean, it
right.
feels like it.
And then again, the nubs, they have these particular ones have a similar shape, kind of this long rectangle, but their sizing is a little different.
It is
So
because some of them are a little bigger than the other ones.
exactly. Um, yeah, very common in the Indian temples are the foundation nubs.
Foundation stones, very common. Yeah.
Yeah. I when we touch on the modern nubs, I believe that these particular are a kind of mason's mark. I think they are a sign that this particular block needed to have been oriented this way. This work gang cut it, and it needs to be placed on the foundation.
Mm.
We, you can point at several examples where you could say, yeah, that works. You can point at several examples and say, no, that doesn't apply at all, which is again the frustrating part.
Right.
But my personal opinion is when you see these type of nubs on a lower concourse or on the ground level, that is more of a mason's mark than these, which are trying to be some kind of language mark, we'll say, or
Design element or something in this. Yeah.
right. And then again, on the interior, we have that same type of panel work where you've got these figures telling the story and these nubs are in context.
That always frustrates the hell out of me. Even the bottom, they're so odd. I mean, there's like two and two, but they're so oddly asymmetrical that it messes with my head.
Right. And there is kind of a pattern here too, where you've got a lower nub and then one that's up, a lower nub and then one that's up. This guy looks kind of triangular.
Hmm.
This guy might have been triangular, but it's been
Or
damaged or modified or something. We there may have been more nubs that are supposed to be here because you can tell some of these carvings aren't finished, and that's also one of the more common things you will see in some of these temples is where the carvings aren't done. Either the work gangs just weren't paid, or there's a variety of reasons why the carvings aren't complete in some of these temples. Let's go to another Indian site. Well, at the same Hampi location, there's these foundation nubs again. This one, I don't know what was going on with it because
yeah,
it was kind of a large
that's
mess.
a real ugly one. Yeah, and there are some that are like that. They're like real ugly messes, and you're like,
Yeah, like what were you guys doing? But you could see the the well surfaced block around it. They intentionally left it like that. That's on purpose. You don't spend hours with your grinding stones and your chisels working this stone down just to leave these in place and then come
yeah,
across
the
that
one
one.
next to it has nothing on it, and then yeah, I mean it's
Yeah. And then again, the positioning is intentional. You've got one dead center and then one lower, one kind of lower. And then there's, it's kind of hard to tell in this photo, but there is one on that same block way on the corner. And it has that kind of D shape that we talk about, this kind of
yeah.
crescent shape. And right above that's a very, very large nub. So this, and on this particular temple, this temple is called the Sunken Temple. It's kind of hard to tell from this photo, but it was intentionally dug down. They dug down almost into the water table. This temple will flood occasionally, so we've got that context of water. Um, let's go to another one in India. India, you could have an entire video just on India alone. Um, this is a temple this is a temple complex called Kotaguli, or sometimes called Kotagudi, and it's hard to see, but here's a massive nub right here on this block.
Yeah,
I mean,
interesting, ugly one. Or I
this,
mean, I hate to say ugly one, but I'm saying it's a weird like looks
yeah,
that looks like a melanin or like a oh I don't know like a melanoma mole.
yeah, yeah. It's some of the nubs have a artistic flair to them, but on some of these temples,
It's super crude, yeah.
they're very rough. And is we'll see that this particular complex has several of these large, rough nubs on them. These are stairwells into another part of the temple. This
Kind of destroyed or yeah.
yeah, as common with a lot of these uh, temples, they are in disarray to ruins. There's so many temples that need restoration, but there's a lot of activists out there that are trying to get the attention, trying to get the funding. You know, like anything else, it takes time and money, and those are often two things that are in short supply. So, getting the time and getting the money to get these places restored just doesn't happen as quickly as it should. And there's a lot of ruins out there. Um, again, this largish kind of crescent shaped. You got this straight edge on the bottom and kind of this crescent shape. I call these a D nub. If you look at like the letter D and kind of flip it around, um, very common with Indian temples are nubs on columns. And like these particular ones have a very, again, crude shape, but you could see the stone was chiseled and worked around it to a fairly high degree of finish, but the nub here is rather
Yeah,
crude.
it's pretty crude, yeah. Interesting.
And there's another
So
example.
weird how I wonder if these are like just how they've aged differently. Some are red, some are gray. It's like, are they different stone or are we talking about that some just got different sun exposure or
A little bit of both, a little bit of environmental issue as far as like some of these are still under cover, some of these are exposed to the elements. So you can see like these two
oh,
right next to each other. One's getting a lot more sun than the other, and
right.
pollution, light exposure. Yeah,
Yeah, I guess that's true.
almost all the nubs, like it's kind of hard to tell in the back. This nub is just gigantic, and then here's a more square, typical nub on these columns. This particular site to me is fascinating, and it doesn't get as much uh, tourist traffic because it is in quite
Oh,
a bit of disarray. On the walls are these continuation of these just large nubs. And you can see that they're in different positions across the wall, different sizes, different shapes. And again, continuing to the back of some of these temples, you will find nubs on the walls. This particular one just has these large nubs.
yeah. And on placements.
Um, let's
Oh, do we want to show the modern ones in India yet or wait?
I want to talk about the modern all-in-one group
Okay.
because I think that they're related, and I want to group in
The one
one. Yeah, I want to group in one that I call modern, even though the site is supposed to be dated to like 1200 to 1500 AD, which a lot of these Indian temples also have that dating around 1200 to 1400 AD.
oh,
So, but the one that I want to call modern has been rebuilt and rebuilt and rebuilt hundreds of times over the years, where you would think somebody would have looked at those and chopped them off, but they haven't. That's a lot of teasing there. Um, Sardinia, the Nuragic culture, they they're Bronze Age people, from what everyone says. But they were a nubbed people, and that doesn't sound right. they were a, they were a nub culture. They received the idea, and they were also heavy into what they call the sacred wells, the Pazzo Sacro. Um, and the Pazzo Sacros all have nubs, and they have these gigantic nubs. I mean, they were bold and proud of their nubs. They look a lot like the Hellenistic nubs. They'll be squares, but you'll also find these circular ones. This particular uh, site,
Interesting. There's circles and squares there.
right, and they're fairly uniform as far as the placement on the blocks. They like to place them on the ends, bam, bam. So you can look at these and say, like, well, yeah, there might have been a lifting element here, until you kind of look and see, well, there's a square one and there was a round one. If you're using ropes around these, that's not, I wouldn't be wanting to stand underneath this thing if it was being lifted by some cordage, or this one down here that's got two different sizes of nubs.
And like I said, take them off then.
Yeah, I mean, these are clearly part of the design, and this is the well, one of these from the air looks like. There's a better preserved one we'll look at here in a second of these sacred fonts. Um, very intentional as far as the placement and the sizing. I could almost be talked into some degree of it being lifting bosses on these particular examples. That doesn't mean that that's what they were for. Just because you can use a screwdriver to hammer in a nail doesn't make it a hammer.
Right. Oh, these are the wells.
Yeah, this is another well. This one is really fascinating. This is the one that's, all of these are kind of near a town called I got the cheat, look at my note. Predio Canopoli. That area of Canopoli has a lot of Nuragic sites around it, and this particular well has been used and reused. There's a Christian church right next to it. Okay. And it has these crazy long nubs on it. And you can see this block here only has one nub, so lifting that would have been kind of curious. Again, we have a large nub and then one that's been kind of sheared and cut down right next to it. One that's not as long and one that's a little longer.
Yeah, and they're not uniform. That's so crazy.
No, this is kind of the entrance to the well. This would have been an atrium for sitting in.
Oh yeah.
With a kind of a lit brazier here before entering the well at the bottom of the staircase. You can see where one has been removed. Was it blowed out? What happened to it? And then the ones on the concourse below it are a little more rough. And you can kind of see there was some surfacing work being done. And that topic we cover, there's another one that's kind of damaged or blowed out. We talk about is the unfinished work. To me, I think this is unfinished work as far as the surfacing goes. Somebody was putting in effort with the chisel and the grinding stone and stopped, but the nubs were left. Another example here. Some of this damage could have come way after this site was, like I said, there's a Christian church next to it that dates, I think, to the 1200s, but this site wasn't excavated until like the 1920s. So there's no telling what was happening here. And last one I want to show as far as these go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just it seemed like one or two. We really didn't talk too much about the number of nubs, but there is something
That has like four on it.
to the nubs, right? Usually you'll see one to two. There are examples of three to four, but those examples are fairly rare. And to me, that shows significance that particular example, if it has more than two on it,
I can't
is
actually
really special.
have a particular block by itself that has more than four.
I've never seen one that has more than four. If there's examples of them, please leave them in the comments. The only ones I know of that have four or more are in Peru at Ollantaytambo.
I was gonna say there are some with four in Peru, and then
Yeah,
even like the dolman that you have.
it's only got four. Yeah,
Four.
yeah, we're going to look at that here in a minute also because I I think this concept goes. If we're going to use standard dating models, I think it goes back to the Neolithic. But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Sardinia does have a lot of that. So
Yeah, yes, sir. Yeah, Sardinia is a
crazy
fascinating place.
giant place. Yeah,
Um,
I don't mean big. I mean giants. Like
yeah, let's bounce way across to Southeast Asia, and we're going to talk about Sigeria.
I so want to go here so bad.
I this yeah, Sigeria looks like would be just a fascinating place, even if it didn't have nubs, but it has nubs.
I didn't even know it had nubs, and I still wanted to go there because the city and all that. But now that it has nubs, I'm like, just went super high on my list.
It's another example of nubs in context with water
Wow,
because
and nubs on bedrock.
this it's called it's one of the pond areas, and the cliff overlooking it has been intentionally cut and surfaced, and there's nubs on it, and the nubs on the surface have these little niches on them. They're kind of
Oh yeah, interesting. I see here.
yeah. So like this one has a little ring, this one has a little ring. These are kind of squarish,
Mhm.
and then there's a pattern here. Dink dink low dink dink. So you got these two that are on the same plane, one that drops, and then these three that are on the same plane. This one's a little lower than that one on that plane. This is a better example showing that that's just not a shadow. It's actually been cut to have that little niche there.
Hmm.
And they're right above a pond.
Okay. Yeah.
So Sri Lanka has nubs. And then here is where I think the nubs traveled with religion. And that's a a topic that kind of gets a lot of can get you in the weeds really fast, let's say,
Hmm.
because it's easy to get hung up on the religious aspect of it. But I do think that, as a religion spread, Hindu and Buddhism spread. They went all over from India into the southeast, into China, into Southeast Asia, into Japan, into all these other places. And as the idea moved, I think these nubs moved with them. Um, in these columns, we talked about columns having nubs. You'll see this very Indian style architecture in Sri Lanka, and then you'll find a nub, two
Nubs.
nubs of different
Maybe they're on the
sizes.
top of the column, not on the bottom. Like that's
No, no. So again, the idea of when you build your temple, you build them in a certain way, and you put a nub on the column. Became okay. We're going to put our nub instead of the bottom of the column to the top of the column, and we're going to have two different sizes. So you have this very small little one, and you have this very tall one. But not all of these columns have them.
yeah.
See, there's one right here, but it's very subdued compared to this one, but they're in the same position. They're on the right side kind of towards the bevel, but different shapes. Not all of these columns have them. So again, are we looking at kind of a mason's mark or what? It's more of the confounding question.
Very.
Some of the temples have these nubs, and well, I'm going to get a drink quick. Much like we just saw, sorry,
Mhm.
much like we saw for the Indian temple, these nubs are fairly large and a little crude compared to the block that they're on. And
Right.
they're in different positions. So this one's kind of centered. This one's more on towards the bottom. This one here is more towards the bottom. Centered, lowercase. But these aren't on the lower concourse. These are actually higher up on this particular temple. And then on the corner here, we've got these squares on these nubs. They're not facing out. These eyes are facing in. I think these blocks, it's hard for me sitting in my office chair miles and miles away and years away. I don't think this temple was built correctly. Let's put it that way.
Right. Or reassembled correctly.
Right.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
doesn't look like it's matching up.
yeah. I mean, maybe they were restacked this way. I think these, and this will kind of go into discussion of the modern nubs to a degree. I think these nubs were placed by the Masons as maybe assembly instructions, and those instructions just weren't
Yeah.
they weren't conveyed. Yeah, because there's several examples of this particular temple complex that have these nubs that just do not match um, the normal building style. We'll say. Sorry.
Interesting. There's one inside the.
This is called the Lotus Fountain. Again, we have a context of water, and yeah, you've got a nub right here, a nice square one. So we've got these Buddhist statues, and on the surface, you might not see that there's nubs
Oh yeah.
right in the bedrock with them. It's more obvious
Oh
on
yeah.
this guy.
Mhm.
And there's again intentionality to these nubs. There's a kind of pattern. There's another picture of that. This kind of gives a better
I guess
angle.
that's more than four.
Yeah, there's three, and then one. So I mean, I could be convinced that these are some kind of constellation. And then you've got one down here, way off to the side. It's kind of hard to see, but there's nubs on this particular part of the wall. You have these longer ones, stubby, kind of a square. These two on the block.
What is the numbering on the blocks? What do you think? What is that about?
This is from whatever architecture. I mean, not architecture, archaeological.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they'll go through, catalog the different nubs with whatever methodology they're using.
Okay.
I don't know too much because I think it's kind of regional as far as what system they use. A lot of temples that have been, let's say, reconstructed, repurposed, not repurposed, rebuilt, will have this kind of. And again, there's a nub.
Yeah.
Will have some kind of marking on them so that when they go to reassemble or perhaps scan it, lidar scan it, they'll have reference points. I'm repeating photos now, but yeah. So bedrock, religious iconography, nubs.
Crazy.
Oops. I'm struggling today.
Mhm.
We can go to Turkey real quick just to talk to a few more about these Hellenistic. This is the Temple of Didyma. Um, it was again. There's a context of water because there is a natural spring on the site, and this was considered one of the oracle sites. I think it was dedicated to Apollo. So you've got water, you've got nubs, you've got this concourse of nubs that are alternating and look very similar to the ones we just looked at in Sri Lanka, as far as you have an elongated one and then a
Right. Exactly.
flat square. Yeah. This particular wall is the it is megalithic. These blocks are just simply gigantic. You can tell from the people walking next to it how large this wall is and the blocks that they use. Some of the nubs, like this particular photo, has nubs in it. They're kind of hard to see,
Oh, right. Yeah.
but you have these kind of triangular shaped ones.
Oh,
So you will find sometimes triangle shaped ones outside of theaters, but usually theaters or maybe important buildings. This was definitely an important building to some people, but the triangles have they have a very special meaning outside of the standard nubs, in my opinion. It's one of those things where it's a feeling. I have a feeling that that triangle means a lot more than a square because
yeah.
you'll find a lot more
There's
squares
not
than
as
you will
many
triangles.
triangle ones as,
Exactly.
and
And so to,
this one always when I see these kind, they just look melted. I mean, it's kind of like you're like, how did the regular wear and tear get that bad with that?
oh, this site has been sacked and resacked. It was claimed by Christians for a while, and yeah, this site's been through hell and back. We'll say. Um, there's a tunnel on the site that has these nubs, and people have come back and carved in Greek letters. Did they originally have the letters in them, or were they added later? The site's covered in graffiti from various ages, so it's really hard to tell that what's original and what's not. Again, back to that wall we were looking at earlier, and just how large these nubs are compared to people standing next to them. This wall is just massive, and you can kind of tell again that you got a square in the middle, square in the middle, square, and then a triangle shaped one, and you have this kind of pattern coming from their placement and the placement of the stone.
The base of the stairs there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. These particular stairs going into the main temple complex on both ends have these nubs on the corners, kind of like foundation nubs in India. This site is it's very special as far as its scale because it's again megalithic, but the sheer number of nubs that are there, and it's an example of unfinished work. There's a lot of detail work that just wasn't done. This is that tunnel way where the nubs are. You can kind of see in the shadows where these nubs with the letters are engraved. They're found in here.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
On the inside of the complex, you have more of these square nubs, and again, you can see the walls are just covered in graffiti from generations and generations of people coming and claiming the site for their own. So someone carved a triangle into this square nub. Again, a triangle. It might be part of a larger sentence or something, but it's kind of curious that we're carving triangles into these squares.
Right. Interesting.
Did somebody know who came afterwards? I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
this,
Base of those have.
yeah, this is again. So kind of like your point earlier about the roughing texture of some of the bevel blocks. So they left the rough texture and intentionally left a rough nub in the texture.
Yeah. It's weird. Oh, those are interesting. There's like round, square, little ones, big one.
Oh, and yeah, this is that front stairway again with the triangles on them.
I wouldn't even necessarily know if I would consider that a nub. That's almost like a plaque, you know?
This one here, yeah, I mean, was the writing contemporary to it or not? It's hard to say. I want to shift to because we have so many examples. Um, let's let's
Well,
kind of
what
get
do you have a Greece theater or
the ones I have in Greece. I've got the Temple of Delphi, and this is one of the examples I use to talk about the intentionality. So again, you've got all this writing, and they're writing around the nub. So they know this nub's here, and if they wanted the writing room,
they
they
would?
could have just chiseled that dude down and then written in its spot. But no, they wrote around it.
Oh,
Very intentionally wrote around it. So it had meaning. It wasn't like, okay, I've got a sheet of paper and this sheet of paper has this giant ink stain in the middle of it. Well, let's grab a new sheet of paper. No, that they could have handled this nub. It could have been chiseled down, but it was left in place. Somebody understood what these nubs were for when they wrote their message around it. The various inscriptions around this.
that's crazy.
The triangle ones. Athens is one of the prime hotspots for your triangles.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I
So
have been
triangle.
in Peru, but mainly.
So we're next to a drain. So we're talking water again, uh, which maybe that's kind of a cheeky little easy way to talk about water. But so why put the triangles next to water? Here it is in further context. And these triangles, you can make a pattern with them on the block.
Yeah, those are some of the more symmetrical ones I've seen.
Yeah. Um, Here's a large triangle. It's kind of roughly shaped into it, but it's there. It's on that block. Right above it is another triangle. So these aren't necessarily in theaters, but it is of importance. Again, you've got the symmetry as far as the placement goes, and these triangular kind of shaped nubs. And this wall is just covered in them. Some are two, some
Yeah.
are one, and then some are circles. I think the cats know, but they're not going to share their secrets.
Right. They're just chilling.
That's right. Like, oh, you want to know the mysteries? We're not going to tell you. Too bad.
I
Just it's very similar to the llamas. The llamas are the true masters of Peru. They have all the answers.
know it.
Um, let's let's really get extreme here.
Okay.
Um,
This is the one we were talking about with the four.
yes. So this is a dolman, and if you know me, you know I love dolmens. This is what I originally got suckered into history about. And this particular dolmen is in France. France is one of the hot spots of dolmens. A dolmen is depending, the mainstream answer for a dolmen is it is a burial chamber that originally had a earthen mound on it that somehow lost its mound. Sometimes, not all the time,
Mhm.
but um, they were just burial chambers. I don't think they were intended to be burial chambers. Just because they became burial chambers doesn't mean that's what they were for. Again, the screwdriver and the nail analogy. Um, of dolmens, I've got hundreds and hundreds in my archive. I only have maybe two or three that have nubs. and I consider these nubs. And this particular dude is Neolithic. It is called Le Maison de Frise. I'm going to say that wrong. Basically, it's called the fairy house. And the way it is shaped, let's step back and let's pull up. This will kind of help explain the shape of it. So, looking into this is a passage style dolman. Dolmens have different shapes and different terminology as far as the shape applies. So this is sometimes called a covered alley or a passage. It's usually to denote a dolmen that has a long entranceway to a back chamber.
And isn't dolmen also like technically like two, I don't know what the word's like, two almost like cairns or giant stones with a lintel on top? Is
Yeah,
that's considered?
that's a more generic term for the dolmen shape. You're going to have uh, two blocks and then a capstone on top of the block, so it makes kind of a table. This is kind of showing that structure. So you have the two stones, and then this dotted figure is the capstone on top of each one. Um, we could really get into the weeds as far as these dolmens. That's a whole discussion on its own. But each one of these blocks is hundreds of pounds. The larger ones are tons. And so they cut, drug, lifted, shaped these.
Now, yeah, as Neanderthals, basically. Like how they do
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
their
a,
human.
a lot of work went into building this structure, getting it aligned how they wanted it to align, getting the shape. And then if we're to follow that, it had a mound on top of it, moving the earth and then covering it. I don't necessarily think every dolmen had a mound, but that's again a whole other topic. The reason why this one is so fascinating, and we kind of already showed it, is at the back of the dolmen, which if this thing was covered, what would this chamber at, yeah, what would this chamber at the back be representing? Um, we've got nubs. We have these two sets of two, and then these two sets that look blowed out. They have this indented damage to them almost. Um, the accepted story is that this is some kind that these are a feminine, that these are breasts,
Right.
perhaps, that we're looking at um, Mother Earth imagery, fertility, you name it. Um, I don't.
I don't know about that.
It's a hard sell for me. Um, it's possible that this is some degree of fertility. Usually, with a fertility imagery, you'll have the masculine somehow represented, and perhaps that's what the oh crap. That's what this inversion is supposed to be trying to represent, the masculine. But I just I don't I don't think so. Um, the shape, these are much larger than these others, so there's no balance between the two. I mean, if you're going to go through a lot of effort, and the unfortunate thing is when you research this site was excavated in the 20s and 30s, and then it was restored. And there are references to damage in the restoration. I think this nubbed block was damaged. You can kind of see it here, but it had this block was surfaced. You can kind of make out this kind
Little
of
indentions there. Yeah.
right that they worked very hard to get this surfaced, and I think there might have been more to this block. Here's another look at the damage on these. I shouldn't say damage. I think I think these are intentionally kind of blowed out. I'm not sure what they're trying to represent. Maybe it is the negative of this being the positive, but I think my opinion is that this is kind of a an expression of Nubs in this very formative state. That the idea is being formed here. To we're doing this very challenging, very difficult work of building the stones and dragging them and cutting them. Let's make our mark here. Let's have a story here.
Right.
And not everything is fertility. I mean,
I hate that explanation for stuff. It's like, okay.
that that is becoming in the last few years the ritual. Everything was ritual in the 90s and early
Yeah.
2000s. Now everything is, well, it's fertility. Well, that's just another expression
I,
of
I mean,
ritual.
for me, I'm just like, I'm like, okay, so you think that they're smart enough to build these things, but stupid enough to think that drawing pictures of genitals makes you get pregnant? Like, what are you talking about? It's just like they get kind of crazy about it, where everything is that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we could have a whole discussion on the the Venus dolls at some point,
Right. Yeah.
the Venus imagery, because that's a whole other
Cycladic figures and how they're, yeah, yeah.
that's a whole other ball of wax as far as questions are concerned. But yeah, I think that this very ancient, and I do, if you're going to go with any type of dating model, I think this is a very ground point of the
Right.
nub idea. Because they put a lot of work in to express these two dots. And if it was just for reproductive functions on a burial site that was going to get dumped with a bunch of sand and earth on it, I'm sorry, I don't, I
Yeah, I don't buy that.
yeah, I don't buy that, because how does that knowledge get transmitted to future generations, which is the whole point of your fertility ritual, is for reproduction. Well, you're going to reproduce once and then, okay, we're done. No, I mean, you kind of need to keep transmitting that idea again,
For sure.
which is going to lead us to, I think, the capping of our conversation, at least for this part. Well, let me show this. Taiwan. I don't have information about this other than the photos. I have contacted them
It's interesting
repeat.
because that first photo, there's a peach hole in the other thing. Did you see that one?
Yeah, this whole this is the in Taiwan. This is the National Museum of Prehistory, so it is for the native population of the Taiwanese island, and they have this very unique block in the museum. I have a My best friend is married to a Taiwanese lady, and she doesn't know what this is trying to say. She's helped me write emails and letters to try to get more information about this exhibit, and I've gotten nothing but silence. But they have, yeah, you've got this,
Yeah, down there's a,
huh? There's a
yeah.
pinch hole
Uh-huh.
on this,
Yeah.
but you've got this block, this stone block. And when I came across this originally, I was like,
And it's funny because Olive Tomble has like that big long ridge. I call it the world's longest nub, or like, but it's not. It's almost like a shelf, very similar to that block.
yeah, what this? It's nothing but questions. There's a pinch hole on the block.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, so it's funny that, yeah, this pinch hole is there, but I was kind of wanting
Yeah.
to save it. But the block itself has a pinch hole, and it has these large square nubs, and it has this long
Shelf or something.
shelf. Yeah, just like Antitombo at the top, you have those massive blocks on the back of them that have that long rectangle
Yep.
carved into them. So I have no idea what this is representing. There's that pinch hole.
Hmm.
Um, it's clearly important. They put it on display. It's part of something, but it's expressing nubs. It's expressing a pinch hole, whether intentionally or not. That's what's on it. So that is a huge question. And again, it's in Taiwan. the uh yeah, I don't have answers.
Like I said, they're global. Okay, yeah, so this is this puts another whole filter on the nubs.
This is where we can really get into uh the artificiality, if that's a word, of things. And I'm going to bounce around between this because I intentionally skipped another site in France that I consider modern.
Yeah, that
Um,
I consider that one too, but yeah.
we're going to start with Hawaii. Hawaii has a Hindu monastery that they started trying to build it in the 90s, and they finished it in 2023. It was dedicated, and it is designed by um, oh, I'm going to look. I have to look at my notes. The same designer of this Hawaiian temple designed another temple in India, and they both have nubs. The one in India, we're going to get to here in a second, but the one in India still has the nubs. The one in Hawaii no longer has its nubs.
So they
So,
put them on and took them off.
exactly.
Was it because people were asking about them, or do we know?
We do not know, and they don't answer emails on the questions on them. Every time I've emailed them, I've gotten a generic "thank you for contacting us," and they send me a link to basically the biography of the architect. Uh, and unfortunately, he passed away like
Of course, right?
I think in 2018 or 2019. He's no longer with us, and yeah, we get these nubs.
Yep, and they're even not similar. I mean, unless he's just doing a complete homage, like where he's just looking at all of them and just complete homage, but I don't know.
I think in this particular context, we are looking at, um, man, I don't want to say cargo cult, but it does feel like cargo cult. It's like, well, this is how they did it, so this is how we're going to do it.
Right.
Not, not with the intention of this is why they did it to honor the gods, and we need to honor the
And
gods.
why
But
would
it's
they
more
take
like,
them off? That's so weird too.
yeah, they're they're not there anymore because I've scoured photos of it recently. This particular feature, these have been chiseled off and the blocks have been resurfaced.
Wow.
Maybe they've missed a few, but the Hawaiian temple has been cleaned of them. And if it wasn't for these photos they took during assembly, we would never would have known that it was there.
Interesting.
So, so
Yeah.
again, you can see because the Hawaiian temple in particular is a really curious, sorry, was a really curious example. The stone was quarried in India, crated and shipped to Hawaii. So that in itself is pretty impressive.
So you think the nubs were made in India or
Yes,
yeah, okay.
yes, yeah. They were part of the quarrying and shaping in India, and clearly the masons on site were given the instruction that they need to come off
Hmm.
because
Maybe in this case they are maker's marks.
yes, or some kind of assembly instruction. This is one of the masons that was tasked with assembly. They
Hmm.
used the hand chisels just like they did in the 14 and 1500s, from what we're told. So there was a lot of effort in constantly resharpening and rehoning these chisels, which was part of the
Looks like he's damaging it.
there was there was a nub there.
Oh, well.
Yeah. So they would have to chisel them down and then resurface them to get that nice pristine, I shouldn't say pristine, that nice smooth finish on it. And then there is a I forget the name of it. There's a gloss applique that can be applied on here to kind of make it have kind of a wax look to it.
Oh, I can see.
Again, we're hanging out with the nub there. And then you can see where the nubs were removed during assembly.
Oh.
So there's one there, but over here, you can kind of see where they've been removed.
Does the one still remain?
Not that I've seen from completed photos.
Wow, okay.
So there's this. So keep this in mind. We're going to go to India, and I'm going to completely butcher the name of this temple, but it's the Mani Mandapam Orakai. And its longer name is much longer. I'm not even going to try it, but it's from the same architect. And it was built, they started building it in like 2009, and then they finished it, I think, fairly quickly. Like in 2011, I think it was consecrated, and has been in service since then. They left the nubs in place on this one. So you've got nubs on the wall. You have the D nub on the walls. On the back side, you can kind of see there was a nub here, and there was a nub here, and it's been removed. And I have a little better picture. So you can see that there's a nub there. And there's one on this corner here. You have these statuary nubs.
Yep.
Again, I think, saying cargo cult just makes it sound wrong as far as, I'm not being reverential to them. I'm very reverential to these temples. If I didn't care about them, I wouldn't bother with them. They wouldn't even be part of the discussion. But I do think that there is some, well, we've always done it that way, so we're always going to do it this way without the intentionality,
Without the knowing why.
Right. It's like we've got the tool. I don't know why I do it this way, but I'm going to do it this way because I've always done it this way. I think quite a bit of
I
that.
haven't done it this way in many hundreds of years, so that is interesting. It's almost you almost feel like he knew something or was trying to say something. It feels very like moon landing is fake kind of thing. I don't know. It feels very.
Well, that's kind of what I guess I'm doing not a great job of. I think that is the cargo cult. The architect went around, looked at a bunch of temples from 1400, and saw, okay, there's nubs on these walls. There's these shapes on these walls. I should do that with my designs. Not because I have the esoteric knowledge that was transferred to me.
To be identical. Yeah, that's like he's paying homage to the old.
Right. I'm going to put these on here just because I want it to look authentic.
Right.
Well, why are you doing that? Because the authentic ones have them.
Yeah.
That sounds dismissive. And if people have other comments, and please share them because that's how we all learn. This site though, like here's the D.
It's just such a weird thing to put on because like if you're gonna pay like accurate homage, have sculptures all over everything. in detail on all the column. I mean, it's like don't have these like modern
These
like flat block surfaces.
right or these odd shapes that have been,
Yeah.
and then to later come behind and say, maybe we don't want that one.
So,
Because
yeah,
we're just going to kind of try to remove it, but not do a great job of it.
right.
And again, here's another one that was kind of removed and kind of not removed. And there's other examples like, so this particular
Sheesh.
uh
Dog.
uh yeah, I forget the name of this that
They're
this
either
represents.
creatures or foo dogs or something, but
Yeah. So the nubs that are on this have been removed. If you look at newer photos,
oh,
like
interesting.
this is from 2017. Like if you go to Google Maps and try to pull this up now, it was around 2019 or so. Somebody came behind and they removed these nubs.
Huh.
Now, to me, that's why I go back to their cargo cult. Because if you had the esoteric, and I say esoteric, if you had the idea, you had the knowledge, you wouldn't remove them. So
Yeah,
somebody looked at them and was like, let's just take those off. They don't look right. That's disrespecting the idea, in my opinion. If you're trying to hide them, why did you put them in the first place?
right.
So,
Really weird.
um, let's travel to Russia. St. Petersburg, Kronstadt. This is everyone's in the community's more favorite examples of a modern nub. Fort Milliton, which is supposed to be dated to around the mid 1800s,
It
was
Kronstadt also have a really interesting polygonal wall too.
it has one of the more fabulous, and I mean fabulous, polygonal walls
Yeah.
on a
Did
back corner dock. So Kronstadt is a port city, and it was a port city for the Russian Navy up until I think now it's still an important strategic spot because it's proximity to Finland. Um, but yeah, that plug in a wall, which is just some amazing architecture, is in the back corner, just almost like like a
that
place where you just
afterthought. Yeah.
wouldn't go to. Yeah. Same with this site here. I mean, this we've got square nubs at this military installation, and they're all over the place. But then there's concourse of stones that they're not on, and this is one of the more curious examples of a modern nub. I mean, these are
Really.
the 1800s. I've seen these referred to as the lifting bosses. Well, it doesn't make sense. Why would you group them like that? They're not, that rope's going to be all kinds of janked up, having the nubs not even on the same plane. So that's a really poor job if you're using that to lift. I'm sorry. There's probably a better way of doing that.
Agreed.
It's and here's an example. This is a really famous photo. I think it's shared a lot, as it should, showing the size. These blocks are large. They're very large. These nubs are large, and that's that example where they're not on the same plane, and they're not even of the same shape. So the depth of this one has got such a severe angle. If you were to lash a rope around it compared to the one
Right.
on the left, that rope's flying off. This one might actually have a chance where the rope can stay somewhat in place and hopefully not pull itself up and over that lip. But a rope on that angle is not going to stay there for long.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's
Oh, and then the one in France, the cathedral.
let's go to France, because this one is the an example of the forest and the trees, because it is right there. It's looking at you. Hundreds and hundreds of people go by this thing every day. It's a major tourist attraction. It is St. Eustache Church right in the middle of Paris. And it has nubs. It has triangles. It has squares. It has these little rectangular ones. They're all of various shapes and sizes. This particular church is very odd. On one corner, it looks Roman, if you want to put Roman quotes. Then you have a Gothic flying buttress cathedral in the middle. And on the far right side, looks like some kind of Harry Potter clockwork. So here's another shot of
Nubs all in that one
nubs.
little area.
Well, there are nubs in two places, but they're both on this side
Oh, so on either side of it. Okay.
of this building here, of this particular part. This tower has nubs on the backside of it.
Oh,
So again, so you can see different shadows. You know, it's not just trickery of the light or
it's a lot
photographic
more than the other one.
artifacts. Exactly. And then, so we got them there. This kind of a, you start getting on the street view and you can really see these nubs go all the way down. So you've got these imagery of the triangles again in context with these nubs. These nubs, this photo.
Okay, yeah. So they were built long time ago.
Right. These the like I said, the dating for this church, there was something on site here in the 1200s. What we look at now is supposed to have been dated around the 1500s. It was reconstructed in the 1600s. The French Wars of Religion caused a lot of damage. The facade was supposed to have been rebuilt in the mid 1700s. During the French Revolution, it was repurposed again to the, I think they called it the Temple of Agriculture or something. In 1790s, it was damaged and then rebuilt again. It was restored in the 1800s. It was damaged again in fires in the 1840s. It was rebuilt again in the 1870s. And the last person that has a lot of their name is all over it is a guy named Victor Baltard. He's supposed to have been the chief architect to reimagine what we've got here in the mid 1800s. So you've got all these people building and rebuilding and retouching and resurfacing and doing things to it. And yet these protrusions remain.
Yeah.
This is the back of that tower I was talking about. So you have these, look at these nubs. There's a pattern. Then you have these kind of flooring posts or something. But yeah, so you've got this on the back of it. It's kind of interesting, huh? You notice it skips.
Yeah, and they're
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
quite
Skip 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So left, right, left, right, left, right. I mean, there's intention and purpose to these. You kind of see it again from this angle here.
Yeah.
And then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Another angle, different heights, different shapes. This drawing kind of included them. So these nubs have been here for a while. Again, another old photo showing that the nubs were there. And then modern times. You've got them here. Even street view. And you've got them on the inner arch.
Huh. Well, yeah,
That's
that makes you kind of go like, is this also a homage, or did some people know something we don't know?
right. Is this is where we can get into the more esoteric ideas and conversations. Is like, is this just the open palm slap in the face of arrogance of the people who have the knowledge and the have the tooling to say,
Right.
we've done this, this is our mark, you primitives can't understand the mark, even if you see it, the idea to you is so foreign, you will never understand. And we're so arrogant and we're so proud of our work that we're continue to have this example that's been set on fire, destroyed, rebuilt. We're always going to have these marks on here because we think it's funny. And okay, I can. I'm not. Not saying that that's not the case because in this particular example, it seems to be very much the case. You're telling me at no point at Reconstruction someone didn't say, "Hey, why don't we shave these
Up with
off and
those. Yeah, they're not great looking. Yeah.
yeah, why don't we plane these down and get a nice smooth finish on this and make it look like the rest?" And someone said, "No, we're not doing that." And then 100 years pass and you have a new set of masons come along and like, hey, we're rebuilding this thing from fire and damage anyway, how about we take some of these off? And like I said, no, we're not doing that. What asking?
Yeah, you're right.
If you want to be conspiratorial, this is your smoking gun
Yeah.
for the fakery theory that we are fish in a fish tank and these are all just the decorations and the skull with the bubbles opening and closing. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to say that you're correct. Or is this cargo cult? Because this does look like a Roman style thing. Like, well, in Rome they have all these buildings that have it on here, so just leave it because it looks cool and tourists like it. It there's nubs in the interior too. It's those this whole building has
Super weird.
nubs on it, and then yeah, street view.
And like they're not like and they're just like nubs where they're not even 100% uniform each or yeah, so
No, no. I mean, you can tell there's been modern mason work around here.
hmm.
You've got one that's been blowed out.
Huh.
It's
I mean I see how you're saying, and is that a fake door?
yeah, we've got the false door motive.
Oh, there you go.
So all your esoteric symbols, the triangle or the pyramid, if you want to say,
Right.
the false door motive, the portal motive, nubs, the archways. I mean, they're all represented in this one little spot here. So,
Yeah, interesting.
like I said, this is where you can just be driven absolutely mad trying to piece together this.
Well, I mean, if we take the broader context of nubs at large, I mean, I still like, even having this conversation today, I'm still like, man, we don't really know.
No, no, we don't. That that's a perfect dovetail. The snake eating the tail. Back to the very beginning. The questions don't lead to answers; they lead to questions.
Yep. Yep. And so, I mean, I just feel like that makes this whole thing like, I mean, I don't even know what to tell people anymore. I don't even be like, oh yeah, just look into it, and see what, because it's like, I don't know if I mean, maybe they'll figure it out. Maybe they like and help us out more. I don't know. It seems to me like the more people that start looking at this, the more they start coming up with dumb shit to say about it. So like, I don't know. I don't know. It's crazy.
In the context of this particular building, St. Eustache Church, there should be documents from the architects
Right. Ooh.
who've who've worked on this. I it, I don't read classic French, so I would have a hard time, and I don't even know where to begin. I know of the one architect, like I said, Victor Beltard, and I've looked into him to some degree, but you kind of start. It's almost I feel a lot of sympathy with the Tartaria people, where you start running into inconsistent answers and inconsistent questions that just go further into, am I being deceived? Is, what are we covering up here?
Yeah, and I mean, like the Tartaria people or like, Dan Stevens or these kinds of people who are into like, oh, history's only 300 years old and stuff. I can see
Mm-hmm.
how like you can that's a theory that isn't preposterous or
No. I
isn't
mean,
the worst in the world. I mean, yeah, it may be. I don't know. I mean, but at the same, it's just counting a whole lot too. But I don't know. It makes it does make me kind of go, what is going on here? And then the the level of like the weird damage, the systematic destruction versus like what was systematically destroyed versus entropy of time and just natural decay of being out in the sources. Like um are these like what gives some nubs like these blown out looks? Is it
mm-hmm.
like an event that happened, or is it just wear and tear of the elements? Like what? I mean, it's so hard to know, really. And things like Peru, we're just told these are basically Incas, like 700 years ago, or maybe, I mean, this is not even supposed to be that old, but then you have the feeling that no, this has to be more ancient than that. But then like why? I don't know. Does it? I don't know. Oh, are those removed?
Yeah, there were some that have been removed.
Okay. That's interesting. That's a weird pattern too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's yeah. It's the capstone to the mind screw job of this. Like I said, once you if you if you are of a certain persuasion where you start fixating on things, the nub topic will absolutely drive you insane. Unfortunately, and if you just don't care, you think they're cool, and that's fine too. But open your eyes. The this history is our history, and that's to our advantage to try to learn our history and try to make sense of these things because um, history is control, and that's don't let other people control our history. You know.
I mean, and that is something that I think a lot of people are really Pollyanna about, and they're really they just believe that like why would anybody control your history, or why would this and this, and I've been down all those rabbit holes too, and I've been down all that way of thinking. But I mean, if you really think that like we're told everything in a completely honest way, in the way that we that like that most likely happened, then you're not really looking hard enough, actually. And I don't mean
Exactly.
to be offensive, and I don't mean that to be like condescending. I just think that we have systematic covering up that's pretty crazy. And like we go into a whole other back like a whole other podcast about what that particularly thing is. But this is just one little snippet of a rabbit hole that I think I mean I it's one of my favorite rabbit holes, the nubs in general. And I think if it's a great place to start if you can literally go to any major uh archaeological site, go to Google images of it and start like clicking through, and more often than not you'll find a nub and you'll be like, what the hell? And then
Yeah.
when you start to, like, I mean, and I'm talking about like go anywhere in Greece, anywhere in Turkey, like they're in multiple places in Egypt, all over Peru. I mean, it's debate. I have found peach holes in Mexico. I haven't exactly found nubs in Mexico. Is there nubs in Mexico?
It's debatable. That is, once you get past Central America, the nub situation becomes very murky. North America is arguably devoid of megalithics
Right.
for some reason.
And when we do find megalithics, whether it's like rock wall and or that's covered up now, we can't really see, and like they say that's natural, but it's not
Hmm.
been out to the thing. Like whatever works they did have were not natural. But there's also whether, even things like sage wall, you could debate whether it's natural or not. Or, I went to Shiprock and I walked on that wall, and there's protrusions that look like nubs, but at the same time, it's supposed to be a volcanic dike. So
Right.
I mean, it's kind of like I would say that they're nubs, but I wouldn't like hang my life on it in terms of it's so I mean, everything's so corroded and blown out and very. I think North America is super erased of whatever. Like, why wouldn't it be developed? Like, why is it as void of things as it is?
Yeah, that gets again to the esoteric conversations. There's whole theories of melted cities, and
Yeah.
um, you look at the evidence they provide on some of that, like the melted brickwork. I mean, it's pretty compelling.
Yeah, I think it's pretty compelling too. And I mean, and mounds, like the Native American mound sites that they systematically destroyed over 1 million of them. And
Yeah.
and like Cahokia is like as big as the base of it's as big as like the Great Pyramid, and it's these weird earthenworks. And like, were they always earthenworks? Like what, like I mean, are we really told what they are not? I went to America's Stonehenge. Um,
Hmm.
and that place is, I mean, it's definitely dolmans and it's definitely human worked. I mean, that you can't deny that. That's pretty crazy. I know there's some stuff in Nova Scotia, and there are
Hmm.
some dolmans in like the Northeast and stuff. So there is stuff in North America, but it's really downplayed, and or we are this epicenter of the last destruction.
Yeah. No, exactly. If and I've covered some of the North American stuff, and it's a really topic that I need to spend more time on because there are, like you said, in the Northeast, in Massachusetts, and that area there's a lot of stonework that is very it's considered natural. That if that natural formation was sitting in Norway, there'd be no argument that it would be a dolmen. Yeah, it wouldn't even be a discussion. But it's sitting in Massachusetts in the middle of some guy's berry field, and oh yeah, no, 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 that's a glacial erratic. I don't know what you're talking about. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Well, America's Stonehenge, I don't think you that is like not even debatable that it's natural at all. Like so that one's pretty interesting. But it doesn't have nubs or anything like that, but it does have little like little cave system and dolmens and like yeah, it's definitely got some megalithic features to it.
yeah.
Um so yeah, I don't know. I do think though that if people have other comments to say, like, okay, let's address um geopolymer, because I know I'm gonna get
Mhm.
like, I don't, if you made it this far, then congratulations.
Yeah.
Like I give you a golden star of wisdom, of wonder. It's like, I don't know, or whatever. I mean, I don't mean to be condescending, but it's just like, if you made it this far, like, good on you. Because a lot of people just don't even have attention spans anymore. But I will say that what the most prominent thing I get anytime I post a picture of a nub that I've seen somewhere, whatever, it's geopolymer, geopolymer. And then like I get, all this stuff, like, even, and I said this to you before we started, it's like, even if it were geopolymer, that's not even, just explaining how it was made is 1/4 of the puzzle.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't think they're geopolymer, but even if they were, you didn't solve the matrix. The Rubik's cube is not solved yet. You just moved one little thing. There's a whole other, like, talk to me about the prevalence. Talk to me about the weight distribution, mass. Who did that? Who was that advanced with their geopolymer then? Like, that's a whole other bag of whistles that opens too, which I'm not opposed to, but it's just like that isn't where you stop.
Right. That geopolymer seems to be I'm not against a geopolymer in theory as far as it answering some things, as far as some of the rock that we see, like in Peru or
Right.
in Bolivia. Um, if we created concrete, then why couldn't they create a concrete grinding up andesite, which is a very hard stone? But if you could grind it up and make a powder and then make a concrete from it, yeah, okay, sounds good. Like you said, it doesn't answer the lifting question. It doesn't answer everything else. It's almost like a shortcut to a quick answer. What's geopolymer? Well, that doesn't that doesn't explain anything really. I think that creates a whole new set of questions. Okay, so you're telling me that they molded it. Where's the molds? Where did they get the mold from? How did they make the mold?
Yep.
How did they get the material to make the
And look
geopolymer
at
mix?
a 50-pound bag of cement is still, and a 50-pound stone are still mass. There's
Right.
still mass in the mix of your Play-Doh, right? So how you still have to riddle me how that got there and how they did that and how they made that and how and where are those tools then and where's that technology and where and who did that
And in so many places where the geopolymer people will point to as an example, you have the quarry
right there, or they'll literally
right
talk about
right
it
next
in
to it.
quarries,
Yeah.
like I
So
yeah.
I mean, like I said, I'm not anti geopolymer, but it is not it's become the new Roman, where if there was an ancient site in Europe, well, that's Roman. Well,
Right.
now if there's an unusual looking block, hey, that's geopolymer. No,
That's for fertility.
yeah,
That's a
that's for
ritualistic that's ritual.
it's Roman geopolymer fertility. Clearly, you should understand this. But
Right.
no, that's me being facetious and probably making you mad. And I don't mean to make you mad, but I do want to open your mind that not everything is a nail when you're a hammer. Okay, sometimes you do need the screwdriver.
Very, very true. So, anyway, thank you so much, Santo. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you could think of like in closing remarks about the nubs?
Oh, I think we've made a lot of people angry. So I maybe we should not throw any more gasoline on that fire. Hopefully, not as many people will be angry as the people that will come away with maybe a more broad, open world kind of, hey, this is a little different than what I originally had in my mind idea. And that's what I want people to take away from this is, like we started off saying, the idea, to me at least, changed as the idea changed hands, people to people. And so if you're searching for the lucky rabbit's foot that you'll shake and it'll give you the answer, you're probably messing with the wrong wish and you're not going to get the answer you want. So instead, wish for the winning lottery ticket and not the answer to Nubs.
That's true. And we will I'll definitely have you on again and
Okay.
we'll talk about, I mean, there's a millions of topics that we could talk about, but we'll figure out like a good one to have on again because like I love deep diving with you and I think you give really good, honest, like astute, like this is the kind of person who should be a professor, you know. So I really love it. It's thank you so much for coming on and sharing and like putting together the all the images and like the formats of structuring how this was going to go. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you letting me ramble for a couple of hours because my wife is tired of hearing it. So it's good to talk to somebody else.
Yeah, yeah. I think at some point it's like I just like I need to talk to some rock people now. And they're a different breed, which I love.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, we will talk again soon.
I thank you.
Okay, cool.